Life of Me, episode 3. Today's episode, we're going to talk about some of the recent events upcoming in boxing. That would be Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul, as well as Manny Pacquiao versus Errol Spence. And I'm just going to give a little bit of my opinions and insight on these two upcoming events because there's been a lot of controversy and a lot of discussions around them. So you may disagree, you may agree, but this is the life of me. First, I'm going to start off by talking about Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul. This is not a professional boxing fight. I repeat, this is not a professional boxing fight. It is an exhibition. Floyd Mayweather has received a lot of flack from different people in the media, as well as commentators from other sports, mainly the MMA community. And a lot of people are failing to realize or don't want to realize that Floyd Mayweather has been retired from boxing for multiple years now. This fight has no implications on his professional record, nor on the record of Logan Paul. It is strictly an exhibition fight. So there's been commentary about, oh, this is bad for the sport of boxing. Why would you fight such an amateur and you're debatably the greatest ever? Definitely in the conversation for greatest of his generation. So my side of the fence is this is an exhibition fight. Are we fucking kidding? It's worth millions and millions and millions of dollars, upwards of hundreds of millions of dollars. Who would not fight someone with a 0-1 record and you have a 50-0 professional record and you're going to get paid hundreds of millions of dollars to do so in a very entertaining manner? Not to say that the fight itself will be entertaining, but the spectacle and the conversations that the fight is bringing up has definitely been entertaining. There's all type of different opinions and conversations floating for each side. There's also the potential, very like almost like hitting the mega millions that Logan Paul will get a lucky punch and crash the internet. But just to see Floyd Mayweather in the ring in any capacity for me is a good thing. Just to see him, because he's a master of his sport, just to see him feinting and calculating different steps and different movements and just kind of breaking down his opponent like a game of chess is just a beautiful thing to see. I wouldn't care if he was fighting a 10-year-old, to be honest. Like, just to see him and work is it's a beautiful thing to behold. And for Logan Paul, there's really no downside. You either crash the internet and have the biggest upset in, I'll say, sports history, not combat sports history, but any sport, any competition. This would be the biggest upset ever for him to get a win. Very small chance that he'll do so. But what's the downside? You lose a fight that you're meant to lose while making millions of dollars. So I think this is truly a win for all that's involved. Fans get an entertaining, I'll say, spectacle. The fight may be entertaining. We might see Floyd Mayweather with a huge knockout on Logan Paul, which, why wouldn't that be fun to see a whole bunch of memes and stuff made about it? I don't think it really damaged the sport of boxing because it's an exhibition fight. And then again, boxing is becoming so much more and more every year a niche sport. Boxing, for the people who are professionally fighting and the promoters, they have a big job to do in order to get this industry, back exciting and pumped up. Boxing has been failing in recent years to deliver the fights that fans want. And that's why I give a huge shout out to our next topic, which is Manny Pacquiao versus Errol Spence. This is a dream fight. This is a fight that many of us didn't think that we'll get this year. We've been let down by the Bud versus Spence. We've been let down by all of the 130, 135 fighters failing to make fights between Lopez, Gervonta Davis, Haney, Ryan Garcia. You know all of the characters. If you watch boxing, I'm just speaking to the choir. There are so many fights that could be made in the lower divisions as well as the higher divisions. Different fights that we would like to see from Canelo. Congrats on his last win, though. That was a good win. But there's a lot of different fights that can be made, even up in the heavyweight division. We'll get to see that trilogy fight with Fury versus Wilder. And then we can possibly also get the Anthony Joshua fight as well. So there is some promising bouts that could be made. But in recent years, boxing has been falling on its head when it comes to making these big fights. Whereas in the UFC, they've been hitting at a much higher clip when it comes to the fights that the fans are dying for. We have yet to get the John Jones versus Ngannou fight, but at the same time, they're making a lot of big fights that the fan bases are thriving for. So boxing it's got its back up against the wall. There's a lot of politics in boxing, and because it's not centralized like the UFC, it's much harder to get two different sides to come together and make these fights that we want. But let me go back to the Errol Spence versus Manny Pacquiao. This is going to be a humongous fight, a huge, huge fight. And as a Floyd Mayweather fan, as well as a fan of boxing, I can say that this is even better for me, because I noticed something with Manny Pacquiao fans, and I'm going to add this. I am a Manny Pacquiao fan. There's a lot of division, and it's almost like black and white in the sport of boxing, where if you like Floyd Mayweather, you can't like Manny Pacquiao. If you like Manny Pacquiao, you can't like Floyd Mayweather. If you like Canelo, you can't like this guy or that guy. And I just think that that's so unfair to the great ability of these different fighters. Like, you'll diminish and ruin your experience as a fan almost with like this tribalism, where you can't appreciate the genius of Floyd Mayweather because you're a fan of Manny Pacquiao, or you can't appreciate the ferocity and the speed and the technique and that willpower of Manny Pacquiao because you are a fan of Floyd Mayweather. And I just think that's like a real waste of energy and of these great once-in-a-lifetime fighters that we've got the privilege of being alive while they're fighting. A lot of us, we weren't around to see Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran and Tommy Hearns and even the Mike Tysons and Muhammad Ali's and just all these different people and boxers at their peak. We miss those times. So to have people that we can watch live, even fly out and see them in person, still alive, doing what they have perfected, it's just a disservice to us. But I understand it. That's how sports go a lot of the times. But I'm going to say myself personally, I crossed over to where I am a Manny Pacquiao fan as well as a Floyd Mayweather fan. I lean more towards Floyd Mayweather, but I can respect the abilities of Manny Pacquiao and all the great things that he's done to the sport. But I say that this fight with Errol Spence, it adds to the legacy of Floyd Mayweather. And I know that some may disagree, but I'll tell you why. Floyd Mayweather and his wins against particular opponents, there's always a group of the boxing population that finds an excuse and why he won and how he won and the timing of his win. And he cherry picked. He fought him too old. He fought him too young. They needed more experience. They had too much wear and tear, this and that. And I feel like this fight, as well as the fight with Keith Thurman versus Manny Pacquiao, adds to the legacy of Floyd Mayweather. Because there are a lot of people who said, oh, Floyd, he waited till Manny Pacquiao was old, forgetting that Floyd Mayweather is older than Manny Pacquiao. He waited till he was beat up and went through these wars and whoop-de-whoop. You're not in control of the wars that another boxer gets into. If you've had a fight and you get through it easy with little harm and they go through a war and then y'all fight each other, it's not your fault that that fighter had a more difficult time with another opponent. But since the Floyd Mayweather-Manny Pacquiao fight, Manny Pacquiao, though Keith Thurman was coming off of injuries, but he was an undefeated world champion. He had already made it through he had already made it through Danny Garcia. He already made it through Sean Porter. He beat all type of top tier welterweights before he fought Manny Pacquiao. And Manny Pacquiao, though it was not extremely close fight, it was a competitive fight, Manny Pacquiao got a clear-cut win. That was at the Floyd Mayweather. Now he's going against another undefeated bull who's been running through the welterweight division. He had a car accident, but we can't use that as an excuse in this fight because he just beat Danny Garcia. And if Danny Garcia, who's a high-level former world champion, it wasn't really a competitive fight with Errol Spence. So if Manny Pacquiao goes in there, does his job, and gets the W, it is going to enhance greatly the legacy of Manny Pacquiao. Not saying that he doesn't have an extremely illustrious boxing career. He's up there, not 8-time, but 8-division world champion. 8-weight division world champion. That's not something to scoff at all. I give him all of his props. But to beat a young gun, I really can't say it's his prime, but you kind of got to say it's his prime. Outside of the car accident, what's saying that it's not Errol Spence's prime? From his age, the level of competition, as well as the output that he's given in these competitions, we'll say that Errol Spence is in his prime and he's undefeated. Getting a win over him in 2021 for Manny Pacquiao, which a lot of people were saying 2-3 years ago that he should have retired, that's a huge thing. And I can't take that away from him. Floyd Mayweather can't take that away from him. No one can take that away from him if he pulls out this win. But if he does, you got to take a hard look at the people who said that Floyd fought him too old, that he'd been through too many wars, that it was too much damage done, that Floyd did this and Floyd did that. It kind of goes to say, damn, Floyd did beat a very good Manny Pacquiao. He did. The injury, shoulder injury aside, like, that's really not on Floyd. If you can't compete, you can't compete. When you step into the ring, I'm not a professional boxer, but from what professional boxers say, once you get into that ring, all the excuses go out the window. Because if you get into that ring and you punch someone one time and they're knocked out, you get the win. They can't say, oh, well, you were injured. You don't get the win. So it can't be the same thing if you go in there and you lose. You can't say, well, okay, well, I was injured and this and that. Once you agree to the bout, you arrive to the arena and get into the ring, it is on you. So I'll say, even though Floyd Mayweather isn't fighting this fight, and it's kind of, it's gonna hurt some people that, yeah, this adds to Floyd Mayweather's legacy. I beat a guy who went on to beat multiple undefeated champions after I fought him. You really can't say that I fought him at a disadvantage then. So this will be great for both of their legacies if if Manny Pacquiao does get the win. And even if Manny Pacquiao is competitive and loses, it also adds to Floyd Mayweather's reputation because then again, if he's competitive with an undefeated boxer, which none of his peers to this point. I mean, Sean Porter did put in a hell of a fight, so I'll give him that. But most of Errol Spence's competitors, they're they aren't very competitive in these bouts against him. So to get a competitive Manny Pacquiao, it throws out, oh, Floyd fought him old and this and that, because Manny Pacquiao hasn't really been active as of recently. So Floyd Mayweather fought a more, I won't say fresh, but just that timing and being in that rhythm and, being in those fight cycles, he fought Manny Pacquiao more into that fight cycle. Then again, also with Canelo, this really doesn't have too much to do with either of these fights, but I just want to put it out there. Man, the fans have to stop being sore losers. Like, they just have to be. I love the fighter that Canelo is. He's probably pound for pound. Like, it's hard to say he's not pound for pound right now. Best fighter in the world in the sport of boxing. Just with his resume and the fights that he had and his output in those fights and the results of the fights, it's hard to say that he's not the best fighter right now in boxing. But I seen a recent interview with Canelo, and he was like, oh, if I was to fight Floyd Mayweather, his prime and my prime, right now, it wouldn't even be compared. How can you say that? How can you say that? You really can't make these excuses that you were too young when you got 40 plus fights. I mean, if they were tomato cans, like, I'll say that because that's what you're implying. If you're saying I fought 40 something professional fighters and I still don't got enough experience to fight somebody who retired at 50-0, then you're saying that the level of competition was drastically different. I mean, which we all know, but at the same time, after 40 professional fights and you're a multi, I don't believe he was a multiple world champion at that point, but he was a world champion. He had fought former world champions, legends like Sugar Shane Mosley, and won. It's hard to say that, okay, I didn't have enough experience, whoop-de-woo. And it may be the case that you didn't have enough experience, but then again, you signed a contract. And if you would have won, you would have been given all your praises. So you really can't hold it against Floyd Mayweather that you and your team of Golden Boy agreed to fight him at that time. And I don't think it was too early. I just believe that Floyd Mayweather was at a level where it might have took you 4 or 5 years to fight him. And I believe he fought Canelo at the age of 36. So you're talking about a 40-year-old Floyd Mayweather. Like, is that really fair to Floyd Mayweather? So I think that the timings did line up and he just got outskilled. It wasn't competitive in any way. And not to say that Canelo isn't a great fighter. He is. But we got to start being more objective. Like, we have to start giving people the credit when the credit is due, because it minimizes the other person's career and what they went through when all of these excuses are being made. And I just expect more from both Canelo and Pacquiao, how they deal with the Mayweather losses. They both had a lot of sore loserism. I don't know if I just made that word up, but I'm gonna go with it. And they have no reason to. They're both excellent, elite level, Hall of Fame level fighters. And that's all I got to really say on the subject. But to go back into Errol Spence and Manny Pacquiao, this will be one of the biggest fights of the year and of recent boxing memory. So this is going to be a treat for all the fans involved and for everyone involved, the fighters, the promotion, any of the endorsers. So, I mean, we got a big one. We got Christmas early this year. So I'm looking forward to the exhibition with Floyd Mayweather, Logan Paul, as well as the super fight with Errol Spence and Manny Pacquiao. And with Errol Spence and Manny Pacquiao, I'll add this in also. Errol Spence, this will be a huge win for him, but I already see that once he gets this win, not saying that he will, but if he gets this win, there'll be a lot of downside to this win because I already know the critics are going to come out and say, well, Manny Pacquiao's this age. He's been through this many wars and whoop-de-whoop. And if you would have fought 2009 Manny Pacquiao, this would have been a result. And we got to stop doing that. We got to. We don't have time machines to take these people back and put everyone in their primes and make all the conditions perfect. And, if the fight was in the Philippines or, if we would have fought in Texas, or we don't got time to do that. All we can take is the people for the ages that there are, the experience that they are, and the conditions that they come in on the night of the fight. And I really don't want if Errol Spence gets this win for people to go out and diluting the hard work and the effort of both of the fighters, and vice versa. Manny Pacquiao going to get this big win. I don't want to hear nothing about a car accident. Nothing. Give the man his due, props, and that's for vice versa for either one of them. So, as a fan of both, I'll say that I don't got a chicken in the fight. I want to see a hell of a fight. Errol Spence win, I'm happy. Manny Pacquiao wins, I'm happy. So, just my little commentary on it. You may agree with some, you may disagree with some. It's up to you. I think I'm being very unbiased with it. You may say, "Oh, he's a Floyd Mayweather fan. He's whoop." No, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of boxing, and I'm a fan of giving just dues. That's what I'm a fan of. So, good luck to all the competitors, all four of the competitors, and hopefully boxing can continue on this trend of giving us fights that we actually want to see, and not these fights that the promoters and the fighters want to cherry pick, and they want to keep these O's, but in their win column, it's not notoriety. It's not really. And not to downgrade any of these professional boxers, but we know that there's levels to it. We know that there's levels to it. So when we want to see some notable wins. You can keep your 0, but let them L's hold weight. We're like, okay, that's a big L. I mean, not a big L, but we want those W's to hold weight. Get the big fights. You can have some tune-ups here and there, but it's like a whole career of tune-ups with some of those lighter weight classes. So hopefully those power 4, power 5 down there can find some type of way to get it in with each other. I don't want to make this video too long, so I'm gonna end it right here. This is the life of me. See you.